Isabella once had a father who gave her hope. He worked day and night so she could chase her dreams. But when he passed away, her whole world collapsed. She lost her home. She lost everything. Left alone on the streets, struggling to survive, she never imagined that one simple choice would change her life forever. What did she do that caught the attention of a cold-hearted billionaire? And what happened next that left her trembling in shock? Sit back and find out as we uncover the shocking story of Isabella and the billionaire. A story you won't forget. Do not forget to subscribe. In the bustling heart of Lagos, where the roads pulsed like veins and the night refused to sleep, lived a young woman named Isabella Thomas. A name people rarely remembered, a face people barely noticed, but a soul richer than the wealthiest men in Ikoyi. She grew up in a world that offered her nothing but a father's love. Love so fierce it shone brighter than all the streetlights of Lagos combined. Her father, Peter, wasn't a man of riches or status. He didn't own land, nor did he wear fancy clothes. He worked as a market laborer, carrying bags of rice heavier than most men's pride, hauling crates of onions that left his hands permanently scented, sweating through shirts that never lasted long enough to be washed twice. But every night he returned home with a smile so wide it made poverty feel like a temporary visitor. And he always told her the same thing. "My daughter, the world might forget your name today, but one day, it will echo where kings sit." She believed him. Not because the world was kind, but because her father never lied. But fate, with its wicked sense of timing, chose to strike when she least expected it. She was in her third year at the University of Lagos studying accounting, her dream, her pride, her father's joy, when the news came like thunder. Her father was dead. Crushed beneath the weight of a falling truckload during work. A life ended because poverty had demanded too much from him. When they handed her his torn shirt and a small bag containing the little money he saved for her textbooks, the world broke. She cried until her throat felt like gravel, cried until no tears remained, cried until she realized crying didn't feed the hungry or pay the hospital bills. And Lagos, wicked as ever, didn't stop moving simply because her heart had cracked. His burial swallowed everything she owned. She sold their bed, their stove, the little radio he loved, and even the only photograph she had of her mother. When the creditors came, she surrendered the room they lived in. In a single week, Isabella lost a father, a house, a home, and a reason to smile. And so she began her life under the great concrete bridge of Iano Aworo, a place where the cold bites and hope dies slowly. Nights were her cruelest enemies. The city above her roared with generators and car horns while she lay on a thin wrapper, staring at the underbelly of the bridge. Mosquitoes feasted on her skin. Rats passed her like neighbors. Sometimes the wind blew the smell of sewage too close. But she never cried again. She saved her tears for dreams too painful to speak. Instead, she woke before dawn, washed her face with sachet water, tied her hair with a piece of cloth she found in the dustbin, and began crafting beaded bracelets and plastic key holders. Small things, fragile things, hopeful things. People walked past her like she was invisible. Some mocked her. Some ignored her. Some threw coins at her as though she were begging. But Isabella smiled. Always. Because her father taught her that dignity wasn't in what you wore or where you lived. It lived inside bones, inside choices, inside every no whispered to temptation. But Lagos loves to test the righteous. One hot evening, as she trudged home beneath the bridge, she walked past a petrol station. There on the ground, glinting under the flickering lights, lay a wallet. Expensive leather, rich, heavy, clearly belonging to someone whose life looked nothing like hers. He picked it up. Her breath caught in her throat as she opened it. Bundles of crisp 1,000 Nigerian nairas notes. More money than she had ever held in her life. ATM cards. Gold-plated initials. And an ID card that read, Mr. Adrian Cole, Theo Cole Dynamics Group. Billionaire. A king in Lagos. A man who probably lost nothing even when he lost everything. For a moment, time froze. Her stomach growled painfully. The sole of her slipper was peeling off. She hadn't eaten that whole day. Her bracelets had not sold. She had no home. And the money before her could rewrite everything. Her hands trembled. Her heart raced. Her mind whispered, "Take it, Bella. No one saw you. No one will ever know." But then, soft as a breeze through papaya leaves, her father's voice echoed in her mind. "What is not yours will choke you. Only the honest rise without shame." Her eyes filled with tears she thought she had buried. She closed the wallet and clutched it to her chest as if it were a living heart. Not a single note left that wallet. Not that night. Not the next morning. Instead she walked, barefoot after her slippers finally tore, more than 12 kilometers to the address listed on the ID card. She arrived at the towering skyscraper of Cold Dynamics Group, a building so tall it seemed to challenge the sky. The guards laughed at her. Mocked her clothes. Mocked her hair. Mocked the idea that she could bring something valuable. One even said, "If I find this kind money, you won't see me here again." But she stood quietly holding the wallet like a baby. A young woman named Carol, a junior staff member passing by, overheard the commotion and came closer. Unlike the guards, she didn't laugh. She looked at Isabella, really looked at her. The dirt on her skirt, the honesty in her eyes, and something in Carol softened. She took the wallet, opened it, gasped at the money inside and ran upstairs to report. Minutes later they called Isabella in. The elevator ride felt like a journey into another dimension. The lights were too bright. The air too cold. People stared at her as though she were a stain on their white tiles. She didn't flinch. She didn't shrink. She stood straight like her father taught her. Then finally she reached an office with glass walls and gold-lettered signage. Adrian Cole, founder and CEO. A man sat behind the desk, typing with the cold precision of someone who had no time for human weakness. He looked like success sculpted into human form. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, a presence that felt like silence before a storm. He barely glanced at her. "Is this her?" he asked, his voice steady, cold, almost bored. "She brought this, sir," said Carol. Isabella stepped forward and placed the wallet on his desk gently. "I found this yesterday," she said quietly. "Everything inside is untouched. I came to return it." He stared at her as though she were speaking a foreign language. "Why?" he asked. A simple question, but heavy, searching, unbelieving. "Because it's yours," she replied. Adrian opened the wallet, counted the money, checked the cards, checked a small folded picture hidden in a compartment. A picture of himself and a little boy. He sighed with something that sounded like relief. Deep, exhausted, personal. Then, without emotion, he opened a drawer and pushed a bundle of cash toward her. "Take it," he said. "It's yours." Isabella's eyes shifted to the money, but she didn't move. "No," she replied softly. Adrian froze for a second. "No," he repeated. "I didn't return it for a reward. I returned it because it wasn't mine." It wasn't her words that struck him. It was the way she said them. Calm, steady, unshaken. Adrian Cole, billionaire, power broker, king of steel and numbers, had never met someone who refused his money. People worshipped money. People worshipped him. But Isabella only respected herself. He leaned back slowly, curiosity replacing boredom. "What do you want then?" he asked. Her answer was simple. "A chance. Any job. Any work. I don't want pity. I want a chance." For the first time in years, Adrian Cole smiled. A small smile. A confused one. A rare one. "Come tomorrow," he said. "I'll see what I can do." Isabella bowed her head in gratitude, but not submission. As she left, Adrian watched her go, feeling a strange pull, a question he had never asked in his life. Who is she? The next morning, Isabella started work. Not as a cleaner. Not as a receptionist. Not as a secretary. Adrian made her a floater. A general assistant to any department that needed help. A humble position, yet one with access to many rooms, many people, many secrets. Some staff welcomed her politely. Some eyed her with envy. Some mocked her behind her back. But Isabella had no interest in gossip or fear. She worked with the discipline of someone who had slept on concrete. She smiled with the grace of someone who had nothing but gratitude. He listened, learned, observed. And slowly, not by trying but simply by being herself, the entire building began to change around her. People greeted her with genuine warmth. Janitors trusted her. Parents liked her. Managers admired her. Even the cold CEO Adrian found himself watching her more than he intended. But Isabella didn't know the truth yet. Someone in that building noticed her too. Someone dangerous. Someone threatened by honesty. Someone who had secrets buried in budgets and contracts. And Isabella, without knowing it, was walking into the storm. Isabella's life inside Cold Dynamics Group slowly took on the shape of a destiny she did not expect. Every morning she arrived early, earlier than the security guards, earlier than the interns who ran around with coffee cups and laptops. She greeted everyone, even those who scoffed at her. She cleaned the little assistant office she had been given. She carried documents with gratitude. She smiled through exhaustion and walked through the giant corporate hallways with a kind of grace people did not understand. But not everybody was pleased. Especially Mr. Gregory Obi, the chief finance officer of Coal Dynamics Group. A man who wore imported suits, polished his pride more than his shoes, and carried an ego heavier than the entire company's financial reports combined. Gregory had built a secret empire inside the company. An empire of missing funds, double contracts, ghost vendors, and numbers that danced like illusions. He had been stealing from the company for years, slowly siphoning millions in clever ways. And he believed no one, not even the cold-hearted billionaire CEO, would ever discover his tricks. But then, a quiet young woman arrived. A woman who asked no questions. A woman whose eyes noticed everything. A woman whose honesty made dishonest people nervous. Isabella. At first, Gregory dismissed her as the charity case. A poor girl the CEO was trying to impress or seduce. That was what people whispered about her. That was what he believed. Until the day she entered the finance department to deliver some documents and paused, just paused, in front of a stack of financial sheets. She didn't touch anything. She didn't ask anything. She simply glanced. But Gregory saw something in her eyes. A spark. A recognition. A knowing. It scared him. And fear is the oxygen of wickedness. From that day he watched her movements with hawk eyes. He wanted to know who she was, who trained her, how much she understood. When he asked the HR officer about her, he was told she once studied accounting at Unilag before something tragic forced her out. A girl with financial knowledge? Working inside his department? Seeing documents she shouldn't see? No, he couldn't allow that. So Gregory began a silent war. He increased her workload subtly. He sent her to get documents from the 10th floor, then urgently called her back to fetch something else. He made interns whisper lies about her. He made some employees avoid her. But Isabella didn't flinch. She didn't bend. She didn't break. Her father had carried loads heavier than Gregory's pride. She too would carry hers. Adrian, on the other hand, watched everything without saying a word. He observed how she handled pressure. He observed how she dealt with mockery. He observed her strength, her gentle spirit, her brilliance. And slowly, without planning it, he started to admire her. Not as the girl who returned his wallet. Not as the assistant he employed. But as someone who reminded him of what people used to be before greed corrupted the world. One rainy Thursday afternoon, the day destiny finally opened its doors, Isabella entered the finance wing to deliver an urgent file. She knocked softly on the CFO's door. No response. She tried again. Nothing. Gregory was in a meeting that day, but she didn't know. Thinking he might be inside with headphones on, she gently opened the door. The room was dim. The air smelled faintly of cologne and freshly printed documents. On the table were open files. Files she recognized instantly. Not because she touched them, she didn't. But because numbers speak even when mouths stay shut. One sheet caught her eye. 2 invoices with identical serial numbers, identical dates, identical vendor names, and identical amounts. She blinked. Her heart skipped. Her breath tightened. She knew exactly what this meant. Fraud. Internal fraud. High-level fraud. She stepped back immediately, her heart beating violently. No. She couldn't get involved. She was just an assistant. She was barely surviving. She needed this job. But her father's voice whispered. Do good even when doing nothing feels safer. Her hands trembled. Her throat tightened. She looked around, afraid someone might walk in and misunderstand, but she didn't touch a thing. She simply memorized everything her eyes could see. Then she quietly closed the door and walked away. But guilt wouldn't let her rest. And conscience wouldn't let her sleep. And destiny wouldn't let her be quiet. When evening came and the offices were almost empty, Isabella went to the executive floor. She approached the CEO's office, her courage trembling like a flame in the wind. Sir, she said softly when allowed in. I think something is wrong. Adrian paused his typing. His eyes rose slowly. He listened. Not interrupting. Not doubting. Not dismissing. He noticed the way her fingers twisted nervously. He noticed the worry etched into her breath. He noticed the truth burning behind her eyes. "What did you find?" he asked quietly. She told him everything, calmly, clearly, with no embellishments. She didn't accuse anyone. She didn't present herself as a hero. She simply reported what she saw. Adrian studied her in silence. Nobody else in his company had dared to mention their suspicions about Gregory. Not one person in 10 years. Gregory was too powerful, too feared, too connected. But this girl who slept beneath a bridge, who walked 12 kilometers on broken slippers, who returned a billionaire's wallet untouched, this same girl stood before him telling truths other people buried. He pressed a button. "Get me the CFO now," he told his assistant. Minutes later, Gregory walked in, smiling the smile of a man who fears nothing. "Sir, you called." Adrian slid the copied files toward him. "What is this?" he asked coldly. Gregory's smile flickered. His hands trembled, only for a second but enough for Adrian to see. Oh, that must be a clerical hiccup," he stuttered. "Numbers get duplicated, systems, mistakes." "Stop," Adrian said quietly. The quiet was worse than shouting. "Who signed these?" he asked. Gregory swallowed. I did, sir, but..." "Who created the vendor account?" Adrian pressed. It was approved years ago, sir." "And who benefited from the duplicated payments?" A thick silence fell. Even the air felt nervous. Gregory tried to speak but words failed him. He was exposed. Stripped. Cornered. "Security," Adrian said without raising his voice. 2 guards arrived instantly. "Escort him out." Gregory burst in tears, collapsed to his knees, begging, shaking. But integrity is not mercy's enemy. Integrity simply demands consequences. As they dragged him out, his eyes fell on Isabella. Small, quiet, steady. He glared at her with venomous hatred. "You will pay for this," he screamed. But Isabella didn't flinch. Her fear was real, but her faith was stronger. When the office finally fell silent, Adrian turned to her. "You have saved this company millions," he said. "But more than that, you've reminded me why honesty matters." She bowed her head slightly. "I only did what I felt was right. And that," he replied softly, "makes all the difference." From that day, Isabella's life shifted. The whole company learned what she had done. Staff whispered her name with awe, not mockery. People looked at her differently, like she was more than the poor girl everyone assumed she was. Adrian especially began to see her in a new light. He watched her when she didn't notice. He studied the way she handled people. He admired her patience, her humility, her strength. And slowly he started changing. He no longer barked at employees. He no longer slammed doors. He no longer fired people for minor mistakes. He asked about their families. He listened more. He smiled more. But the biggest change was something only Isabella saw. The man who once lived in emotional winter began thawing. Slowly, tenderly, every day they spoke. One evening, when almost everyone had left the building, Isabella stayed back to rehearse a presentation. She stood before a whiteboard, gesturing passionately, practicing without noticing the passing time. Until she heard a soft clap. She turned. Adrian stood at the door smiling. "You're brilliant," he said. "You explain numbers like they're poetry." Isabella blushed. "I'm only trying." "No," he said gently. "You're becoming." Those words, "you're becoming," felt like a warm sunrise in her chest. They began talking more after that. Sometimes in the canteen. Sometimes outside the building at sunset. Sometimes beside the window of his office when he needed company but didn't know how to say it. She asked him things nobody dared ask. "Are you happy? What scares you? Why don't you trust people?" And he answered her, not with the arrogance he showed the world, but with the vulnerability he had locked away for decades. She became the first person to hear the truth about his childhood. The poverty he escaped, the mother who abandoned him, the betrayal of people who pretended to love him when he became wealthy. He became the first person to hear about her father, her dreams, her nights beneath the bridge. They healed each other without knowing it. Weeks later, Adrian called her into his office. He thought it was for work. Instead, he handed her an envelope. "I don't deserve gifts," she began. "This isn't a gift," he replied. "It's a promotion." She opened the envelope. "Junior financial analyst. Full-time. Permanent. Benefits." Isabella gasped. Her eyes filled with tears. Sir, I don't know what to. Say nothing, he told her with a soft smile. You earned it. Then he opened a small velvet box. Inside was a car key. Your transportation should match your future, he said. She covered her mouth, tears flowing freely. She hugged the envelope to her chest. She didn't know that in that very moment, Adrian was thinking, if this is what love feels like, soft, patient, quiet, then maybe I have finally found home. Over the next months, their bond deepened until it became impossible to hide. Staff whispered. They're close. He treats her differently. She changed him. But Isabella didn't chase his wealth. And Adrian didn't chase her beauty. Their connection grew from truth. One evening after a long board meeting, Adrian invited her for dinner. Not in a fancy restaurant but on the rooftop of the company building. Candles. Warm air. City lights like scattered diamonds. They talked for hours. About loss. About dreams. About destiny. Then suddenly he grew quiet, his heartbeat loud enough for him to hear. I spent my whole life thinking love was a weakness, he confessed. But loving you feels like strength. Isabella froze. She didn't expect it. She didn't prepare for it. But her heart had been whispering his name for months. He stood, walked around the table, brought out a small box and knelt. The billionaire who knelt for no one knelt for her. I don't want perfection, he said. I want peace. And you, Isabella, you are my peace. Please marry me. She sobbed. Not because she was surprised but because she finally understood. The night she returned that wallet, destiny had returned something greater to her. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Adrian. I will. Their wedding was small, warm, intimate. Staff, close friends, a few relatives. No paparazzi. No noise. Just love. As Isabella walked down the aisle, someone whispered, how did a girl from under the bridge become the wife of a billionaire? Another answered, because honesty lifts people higher than money ever can. And that, boss, is the truth of the story. Isabella didn't rise because she sought wealth. She didn't rise because she impressed people. She rose because she never let poverty steal her goodness. She rose because she protected her dignity. She rose because she chose right over easy. At the end of the ceremony, as she and Adrian exchanged rings, the hall fell silent. Two souls, once broken in different ways, became whole together. The girl the world forgot became the woman a billionaire couldn't live without. Not because she had money but because she had character. And from that day on, Cold Dynamics Group became a company built not on fear, but on heart. And all because one girl made one honest choice. White medium star moral of the story. Honesty does not always bring wealth immediately, but it always brings destiny. Character is the only currency that never loses value.